noted on because being late. All right.
It's 4 o'clock. We'll call the community safety meeting to order. It's Wednesday, April 12th, 4 o'clock. Do I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
All in favor? Thank you. Next committee meeting date, May 9th, 2023, here in council chambers at 4 p.m. First item, Community Safety Animal Protection Services Monthly Activity Report. Ms. Lloyd.
Add, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Motion?
I just wanted to ask a question. We got a letter from a resident down on the boardwalk. Did we respond to that in any way, shape, or form about a woman in front of her had dogs and stuff off leash, walking the boardwalk, et cetera, and obviously interfering with this person's space?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, a response was done and included to Mayor and Council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
So
you.
moved.
Thank you. And one follow-up question, actually. We do outreach with a number of our new immigrants and that kind of stuff. Do we teach them about, like, in our welcome guide, those kind of things, or the information, do we talk about the importance of dogs being on leash and other things?
Through the, to the chair, yes, we do have it in our pamphlet. We have reached out to, actually myself, to go and speak and assist new immigrants, but we haven't had a response. That was prior to COVID. So I will reach out again and see if space and time can be made available for me to be able to go.
Okay,
and visit.
thank you, because someone did just report to me yesterday that they were jumped on by a dog and it ripped their Lululemon pants, and they were most upset, and the dog was friendly.
Yes.
And the person with the dog seemed to not speak the language, and so there was some miscommunication, but,
So
and
for
frustration.
Levi's, there'd be no problem, but Lululemon pants, I mean, hey.
I don't know who goes jogging in Levi's, but okay. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Galanders.
Thank you to the chair. Thanks for the report. Just regarding the conversation we were having last night about our bylaws, I think it's this committee is a good time to bring this up. I don't know if now is the time or during managers' reports, but I'm wondering if I could make a referral to staff to consider making a bylaw that you cannot adopt, sell, or give away any rabbit in the city of Richmond unless it is spayed or neutered. Because even though we don't sell them in pet stores,
Don't we already have that?
no, we don't. So even though we don't sell them in pet stores, we can't sell rabbits in pet stores, we don't have a bylaw that says that. And so any breeder could be breeding them and selling them on Craigslist, which is fine, you're allowed to do that. But if we had a bylaw that said they had to be spayed or neutered before being sold on those platforms or any other platform, that's all the bylaw has to say. That just because the speaker last night said it did work in Kelowna, so why not do that here?
But it's Craigslist.
Point of information. Didn't the mayor make a comment that we should take that to Parks and Rec?
He did, but we don't do the bylaws at Parks and Rec, so I thought it'd be more appropriate to bring it here.
Yeah.
Because it's animal control. It belongs here, I think, if anyone has an.
I think we could bring it up at GP because it involves all of them, and so then it's a cohesive one that covers all of them. But you can make the referral, and I think we probably want to have
Refer to
staff
GP.
comment on how that might affect availability for agricultural purposes, because you are allowed to have a rabbit farm, I believe, as an agricultural product, so the bylaw has to
Specify, like, for the purpose of pets or whatever?
Yeah, so did you want to make the referral?
Yes, please.
Okay, and so can you repeat your,
Make a referral that staff look into creating a bylaw which states you cannot sell, adopt, or give away any rabbit in the city of Richmond for a pet, I guess, unless it is spayed or neutered.
okay, do I have a seconder? Okay, any discussion? Councillor McNulty, you'd like to make?
I just want to make sure our, what we have, and I think this should go to GP. In terms of the referral, to look at also what enforcement we would do and how we would, no disrespect, police it or administer it, and what it would take in terms of resources to do so, and how great a problem it really is, considering we don't allow people to sell rabbits and others. So I think we should get it all together so we know what we're looking at.
Point of order, we do allow people to sell rabbits. We just don't allow them sold in pet
Bait.
stores.
Yeah.
So most animal sales are done on Kijiji and Craigslist and whatnot. I think just having the
Well,
bylaw there often prevents people from breaking the law.
what I'm referring to is looking at the legal aspect. We don't allow it in pet stores, and that's the only place that we have a jurisdiction over. So how do we control? We need legal, and how we can. There's no sense making a futile recommendation is what I'm trying to get at. It's got to have some teeth. And either we have jurisdiction, I can do what I bloody well want on Craigslist, and you can't stop me, okay? And because you have no recourse to do it and no jurisdiction. So I guess that's where I'm coming from, to get that as well and see what we can do, okay? And add to it. We might as well be complete, because we'd have to refer that. You can make a bylaw, but if it's not enforceable bylaw, why do you have it? So anyhow,
So
I
is
don't
that a-
ask staff to come, and this be brought out by GP.
And you want to bring it back to GP? Okay. And is that a friendly, or do you want,
You okay with
is that
that?
okay, or should he make a,
I'm trying to support you.
move an amendment?
Sure.
Okay. So we cannot adopt, give away, or donate rabbits for pets unless they're spayed or neutered in the city of Richmond, and to come back with what enforcement and how we might police it, and bring it back to GP, please.
Okay. Michael's got his hand up. I don't know if he wants to speak
Yeah,
to
we're
that.
going there in a second. Okay, and Michael? Counselor Wolf? If you can let him speak, that'd be great.
It's not on. Push the button.
Can't hear you.
Remove pin.
Can we allow him to speak?
It's usually at the other end. That's the problem. It's not here.
You can type it in the chat.
Okay, you need to type it in the chat.
All right,
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Okay?
okay. Let's call the question. All in favor of the referral? Okay, any opposed? Thank you. Thank you. Sorry?
Sorry.
Okay,
I
and
moved it.
staff recommendation,
Moved it.
and thank you. Moved by Councillor McNulty, second by Councillor Hobbs. All in favor? Thank you. Number 2, property use and parking enforcement monthly activity report. Mr. Corrado.
To the chair, I have nothing further to add, and I'm open to questions.
Councillor Heed?
Thank you, Chair. A couple things, in just CS 15, in your property use calls comparison February year-to-date, in unsightly premises, what I was, where I'm coming from, is the complaints that I'm receiving regarding unsightly premises more or less east of number 4 road. Do you divide them up, or do you have some type of indication of the 47? Is there a denser area where you're finding these unsightly premises? And let me give you an example of those houses right at 5 in Cambie. I continually see the police at those locations. They're probably one of the most unsightly premises you could imagine, and there's about 4 of them there.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, I'm not aware of any specific density or concentration, and unsightly really also depends a lot on, in many instances, which communities are very proactive in terms of reporting them. But I'm not aware of a specific density, but we can take a look at that.
What I'd be looking for, and it can just be in a memo style to all of council, if you can get a dividing line, whether it's east of 4 Road and then west of 4 Road, I'm just looking for it. Because anecdotally, I could say we probably have more on the east side than we do on the west side, but I want to have the information more specific.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, yes, we can provide a memo to council.
And the only other point I want to make at this time, because I'm looking at your parking statistics, is there any update on the Spires Road area? We had quite a lengthy discussion and we moved that into a pilot project on the complaints.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, I'm not aware of any major uptick in parking-related offenses associated specifically with construction in that area, but I can look into that and get back to you on that.
And the reason why I bring this up is we did decide we wanted to go with a pilot project there, and whether we have that put in place or whatever, because I'm sure there's going to be other areas such as the one on Azure Road and Westminster Highway. I think we're getting complaints already in that particular area.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, we can get back in terms of a memo, in terms of the statistics specifically associated with parking violations that we can attribute towards construction in the area of Spires Road.
Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs?
Thank you, and through the chair, thanks for the report. It just occurred to me, looking at the numbers, unsightly premises seems to be one of the categories that lends itself to proactive enforcement. Do we proactively enforce unsightly premises, or is it all by complaint?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, predominantly it is via complaint, but where we do have areas where we have had that have been generated as a result of complaint, we do proactive patrols to go back and see if they're still in compliance. And it is not uncommon to have people that have histories of non-compliance with unsightly sort of fall off the wagon, so to speak, and things get out of hand again. So typically those proactive patrols are helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Councillor Wolf? We can't hear. Has he chatted? Has he put something in the chat box? Because if you pull it up.
I chatted with him, but he didn't reply.
Okay, because there's something in the chat as a 1 there, so if you pull it up, I could read it out.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Must be it's got to be at his end.
We can't hear you. So what's in the chat is what you guys have written, not what he's written? Okay.
Just said that everything looks good on his end.
Oh,
And he'll try to see it.
He
Okay.
can hear us, but we can't hear him.
okay,
It's bad.
okay. Okay, Councillor Calanders.
Just a comment, thank you, through the chair to staff. Thank you for the report, and I'm just so shocked by the year-to-date numbers so far for short-term rentals at 81, and the whole year in 2019 was 18, and that was pre-pandemic, so it's definitely not just that it's pandemic, post-pandemic travel, right? Can you attest this to like one repeat offending property or anything like that?
It does not appear, through the chair to Councillor Galanders, it does not appear to be attributed to one specific property. There's distribution, and this is a combination of a few things. One, this is a combination of receiving complaints and proactive and investigating them, and also some proactive investigative techniques that we're employing, looking at cross-platform ways of investigating ads. And we also have 2 full-time positions in place right now that are working around the clock on these cases pretty much.
That's really effective, and that's great that you're catching them. And just what is the consequences for a short? Is it sort of a repeat of offend once, you get a fine, and then if you offend multiple times, does it get larger? Is there any more recourse?
Typically, the first issuance of tickets is usually where we go through the spectrum of enforcement techniques we have, but they can escalate up to long-form prosecution and court action. That has not been the case to date, We've received a lot of compliance through ticketing and also through education.
All right, well, thanks, keep it up.
Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I say keep it up as well, but you just hit on something, and I appreciate it. Obviously, I have no problem with the 2 temporary full-time people, and I hope they'll be full-time. Forget this temporary business, get them on. But you did just bring up something I think it's important we need to capitalize on, and that is you brought up the idea that we are investigating ads and what have you. And I think that's something that needs to get out there. You know, it's the same, eventually we will catch you, you hear the messages, you know, with distracted driving. Well, eventually we're going to catch you because we're going to read your ad and we're going to go after you. And I think that needs to get out there to the public, either through newspaper ads, through the communique, Let's Talk Richmond, that Richmond is taking action for short-term rentals. We have rules and regulations. I was down in the front and somebody came and asked for a business license and wanted to, had 3 rooms, they want to do some short-term rentals. Our front of desk said, you got to do this, you got to fire, you got to have gas, you got to have this inspection, that. All laid out there so that you can legally have short-term rentals in Richmond, and we encourage it. But we don't encourage those that are violating. So I don't know, maybe just take it under advisement. You know, as I say, keep up the good work, staff are doing a good job, but let's tell the people that, you know, and we won't have 81, you know, it'd be nice to have 0, and people complying with the rules and regulations. We're doing to keep people safe, as, you know, so anyhow, it's just my comment through the chair to staff. I think sometimes when you're doing a good thing, you don't just let it slide. Let's try to build on it.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we continue to work with corporate communications, and we can have that dual message of the fact that there's
Send out a
vigorous
press release,
investigation, and at the same time, there is a pathway towards compliance.
Good on you. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a recommendation?
There's a recommendation.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Richmond Fire Rescue Monthly Activity Report. Chief?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I have nothing further to add to my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions from you or your committee.
Councillor Heed?
Thank you, Chair. Chief, you know the question I'm going to ask you first off, the medical calls. When we look at the medical calls, we're just below 500 for the month of February, and I believe that for February, it's one of the highest since your stats show from 2014, I believe I was looking at. Any explanation as to why or rationale is to support that much of an increase?
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Heed, there's a number of reasons why that number is increasing. Obviously, our crews are responding to more calls for service than they did in 2014. There's more people living in the city. That averages out to more and more calls for service. As well, there's been, since 2014, a variety of changes in the way the BC Ambulance Service assesses calls. And so those numbers have increased, decreased, and now they're back on the increase. I'm confident to tell you today that we still have capacity to maintain service, adequate service for this call volume, and I'm not concerned presently about that.
Well, let me tell you, my hats go off to the fire service and all of our protective services when you see a dramatic, when you look at stats, it appears dramatic increase in medical calls. But the men and women of Richmond Fire Service are, do an outstanding job. I guess from my point is, do you meet often with BC Emergency Health Services? And do we still have a little bit of conflict with them on the medical calls?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, in Richmond, we don't have conflict with them on medical calls. In fact, we actually enjoy a really healthy, positive working relationship. The street crews in Richmond that are BCEHS employees routinely comment on the high-quality care that RFR staff provide. And I personally meet with the operational and administrative leadership at least every 2 to 3 months. And I've got another meeting coming up next week, actually, with them, and we're discussing a lot of these situations with their crews and our crews and how we operate together.
That is good to hear based on Councillor Hobbs and my experience of firefighters and emergency health service people at particular calls, but good for you. The next question I have, it relates to, and I picked up something from Chief Shohan's report too on the overdose. We had 28 overdose deaths last year, and I looked at your stats February to February of last year, and we have an increase of 23 overdose/poisoning. I don't know if you have this available at this particular point, but are those generally related to the fentanyl crisis we're facing?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, those generally do include those types of calls. However, I'm happy to provide a further breakdown for yourself with respect to which calls were included in that data capture. With respect to the way we capture our records management for overdose and poisoning calls, overdoses are not necessarily just street drug overdoses that we attend. They also could be accidental overdoses at home. They could be poisonings with respect to cleaning products. So it's one bucket of data that we take a look at to present that number.
Chief, it'd be nice if you could just, because of the crisis we're dealing with on these overdose deaths due to fentanyl and other illicit drug substances, if we could just divide that out, I think it would be beneficial to us to get more of an understanding of the differences.
Yeah, thank you. I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the report again. A great job done by our men and women in terms of fire rescue. I was very proud of what we do here in Richmond. I just have a question. I want to follow up on Councillor Heed now that he's taken my spot in Econ, but of the 490 calls that we have been to, and thank God you're around to go, has there been a transfer over to BC Medical on every one of those calls? Or have you been accompanied by eventually the ambulance? I'm not criticizing them because I know how they operate and what happens. I've sat in some of those with call takers, knowing what happened. But did BC Ambulance respond to 490 times as well to those, or were we on our own, so to speak, to look after it? And I think that'd be important to know in our reporting as a statistic, because our men and women are on the scene for 31 minutes. It almost means like you're taking control of the whole thing, you're dealing with it, and you wrapped it up and it's gone. Now, was there an ambulance eventually called? Did they show up, et cetera? We know how difficult the situation that they're in. I mean, it's political, economic, and others, and we know that. But I was just kind of looking to see if, we did have transfer over to medical help, because we don't transport.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, you're correct. We do not transport. That is BC Ambulance's sole responsibility to transport to a medical facility. With respect to the medical calls that we attend, the majority of those calls are high acuity calls, and so yes, an ambulance will either attend with us or respond at some point shortly after, in which case we either turn the patient over to the crews or we collaborate in getting them into the van and off they go. There are a number of calls that we attend that the results when we arrive on scene after doing an initial assessment are such that we report through dispatch back to BCAS that the call is minimized in its criticality, and therefore the ambulance crew can clear us from the incident, and BC Ambulance will follow up with that patient at another point.
Well, I think it's, thank you for that. Yeah, when the number of calls go up 40% in a year compared to previous years, to me that's extremely significant. And thank God that Richmond Fire Rescue is there, and we know that they will respond. And I think that's something the public needs to know as well, because when you phone, they'll say, please fire ambulance, call the fire department, they'll be here first, and then I need an ambulance or whatever. So I leave that to my colleague now to deal with those kinds of issues that, because obviously that's another issue and they need to get many more call takers and dispatchers at ECOM. So anyhow, keep up the good work and pass that on to our men and women. We appreciate the job they're doing.
Thank you, I will.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair, thanks again for the report. Just not only the medical calls, but they're the ones that have gone up the most, and on the graph, they spike quite highly. But if you just comment on how that impacts on your operational ability and your deployment, because anytime calls go up that much in any category, it can have an operational impact. So can you comment on how you feel about your operational readiness and ability to respond to other types of calls because of this kind of increase?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, thank you, I can. RFR is very fortunate in that we're distributed strategically throughout the city in 7 operational locations, so we have the capacity to arrive on scene within 4 to 6 minutes, most times when we're called. As well, the deployment model that we employ with our engines, ladders, and rescue trucks take into account the types of calls that we respond to. We're very aware of the variety of calls, and so we pre-place units that are specifically equipped to handle medical calls in those high acuity and high volume areas such as Steveston, Brighouse, and other areas. We also know through our call volume analysis that over the course of several hours during a day or certain days in the week, those calls are more numerous in certain areas, and so we pre-place trucks in those areas as well based on the call volume that we've experienced historically and we know we're going to continue. And so that allows us to respond vehicles in more timely fashion in those areas. Councillor McNulty mentioned the time on scene as well. And so that time on scene is an average time on scene for every call that we respond to in the course of a month, which includes motor vehicle incidents, fires, alarm calls, and medical calls. And so that 31 minutes is an average of any time on scene for all of those calls in service. Medical calls sometimes take more time just because of the issue at present. Sometimes we're able to clear a lot quicker. It all depends on the incident.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a really important answer for people to hear and the public to hear is that, there is a lot of analysis that goes into pre-deployment of resources strategically where they are geographically and all that. So that's good to hear. Just when it comes to medical calls, and these statistics I think are pretty readily available through Stats Canada, we do have an aging population. So I imagine when you do the analysis, we'd all anticipate medical calls to continue to go up actually because of our aging population. Have you looked at that in any kind of detail?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, we have looked at that in detail. I'm not able to comment on exactly that right now. Often the data that we capture at the scene sometimes is protected, and as well the data that we capture in the RMS sometimes is shared with BC Ambulance, and the patients are released to BC Ambulance before we can gather age, demographics, etc. So I'm not able to comment exactly on the age of our usual customer. However, we take a look at the call types, the call volumes, the area, and the density and the demographics, and we pre-place our apparatus or prepare to respond our apparatus based on that.
Right, and just one last question through the chair, different topic, but on the Emergency Operations Center and you were talking about it, I forget which page it was, but using the new software, and you were talking about increased efficiencies and better capture of some metrics. So I just wondered, is that fully integrated into our own software, or what's the forecast for that? And also, maybe just a couple examples, if you have them, what would be the type of metric you're talking about that would be easier to capture and therefore create better efficiencies?
Certainly. Again, through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, thank you. The software that we're trialing that would support an emergency operations center deployment would allow members of an EOC or a working group in an EOC to log in remotely, work virtually, and not have to be captured in the same room in order to conduct their decision-making and emergency event support business that they do. Some of the efficiencies that we're realizing with the software include a real-time list of tasks that are currently ongoing, who's assigned to those tasks, the completions of them, the priority of them, and as we all know, in prioritizing decision-making and actions, those priorities will change very dynamically over the course of an hour or even quicker. And so the software allows us to reprioritize quite quickly quite routinely. One of the big efficiencies that we find is that that data and that information can be shared across an entire spectrum of people that operate in the EOC immediately, rather than having to wait for a briefing time, which was a historical process in an EOC. As well, one of the efficiencies that we realize as well is at the end of an event, when we close off an event and demobilize the Emergency Operations Center, all of those tasks, all of the issues that we knew at the time are all time-stamped with how we made a decision at the time based on what information we knew. So that's going to be very supportive of us for reporting after the fact, any freedom of information requests, or if there is any follow-up information that has to be given.
Yeah, that alone would be excellent. So much greater increased interoperability then. Well, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming out to Salish Skills at the 39th Service Battalion and the work you did sharing the emergency response with them. We have a motion on the table? All in favor? Thank you. We have a verbal briefing. Anything else to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to leave you and your committee with a short verbal update. Right now, even though we've experienced some significant rain weather in the past weeks, it is a concern for us that, warmer weather is coming, as well as high winds allows the brush in the area within the city to dry out quite quickly. So you may see Richmond Fire units in the city practicing wildland firefighting deployment. We're going to be releasing information to the media that we are out there practicing, so as not to alert or cause concern for anybody. And as well, we're going to be conducting some on-site hazard risk assessments and pre-planning of certain precious areas within the city should there become a wildfire event. So I'll be sharing more information with yourselves and through corporate communications on that.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
RCMP monthly activity report. Chief Superintendent.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, councillors, staff. I don't have anything to add to the report, but welcome any comments or questions that you may have.
Councillor Heed.
Thank you. Surprised.
I'm never surprised.
Chief, catalytic converter thefts. And, I noticed you've got this awareness bulletin, which is really good. It's been in the news lately, not necessarily Richmond, but mainly Surrey, and the focus being in Surrey. So Surrey's got a program in place, I think, through identification. Are we at a point where we need something like that, or we're looking at that?
To the Chair, to Councillor Heath, I have been actively engaged with the catalytic converter thefts for the last 4 months, and I know other cities. First of all, this is a problem which is not just limited to Richmond. It's a Surrey, it's a provincial, it's a national, it's an international phenomena. Thieves are targeting these catalytic converters for the 3 precious metals that are in there that yield some high value to them. But through our ComStat model and through our new crime reduction initiatives, the teams are working proactively in targeting catalytic converter thieves. Obviously, these investigations involve gathering information, intelligence, and evidence, and leading to subsequently to prosecution level. So we have examined and explored every single avenue or technique that has already been explored. I know other municipalities are looking at scrap metals and fines and bylaws and all that. It's a challenging situation, but our teams are fully engaged. Our property crime is fully engaged in that, and we are making progress. And this is something that is monitored during our weekly and monthly crime reduction meetings, and we have made quite a bit of progress, and we'll continue in that direction, and I hope to see some good results down the road.
Thank you. Is there any help from ICBC on this? Because I'm sensing ICBC would be the insurer of this particular type of theft.
Through the chair to Councillor Heath, that is correct. Every time, if we have an opportunity to work with our partners, including ICBC, we always leverage on those relationships, and ICBC is part of our solution here as well. And if there's anything that we can do, we'll definitely use that to our benefit as well.
Great, thank you. Just quickly in moving infractions, is speeding always in the high one? And you may not be able to answer this, and I'm not sure anyone here would be, but have we changed the signage on speeds in Richmond because we agreed to move them all to 50K? Is it done? We've done it? Still not on the two-road bridge?
It's not our jurisdiction.
Yes, it is.
Please help us on that one.
We can check with transportation and get back to you.
I'm told two-road bridge is ours. But one last question, Chief. Interesting, and just a comment on this, you don't necessarily, but in your year-to-date totals of violent crime, you include common assault. Is that consistent throughout? Because I'm going back again, many, many years ago, we didn't include common assault in the violent crime reporting. Is that changed now? We do include it?
Through the chair to Councillor Heath, since I have been at the Richmond Detachment, I have noticed that it has been part of this report. And I'm not sure if whether it existed or not before. So I'm not sure if I'm able to
That's fine.
fully respond.
And the reason, Chief, is I bring this up is, we'll talk about your plan coming up here, but, understanding the difference between common assault and more violent crimes, but that's all I want. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, just a couple of items from myself, comment, and I appreciate the report, great report again, thank you very much for it. I was happy to see that there are no hate crimes, et cetera, for year-to-date. Obviously, the programs, the posters, and everything else, and everybody's working on it, is more aware to see on it, so good on you, and it's good to see. I know we've got them at every elevator, for example, in this hall, and I hope that we have them in other public places, stamp out hate and that kind of thing. So I think, and that was led by the RCMP, so I thank you for that. I just had a question on mental health. Obviously, it's a huge issue. It's come to the forefront more so now, even that the fact that we're having the latest is in the education system, which I left, that it's come to the forefront that everybody is burnt out, children are not able to focus, et cetera, and their mental health is totally affected, even down to grade 1 and 2 level in kindergarten, and it was just released today. So, but it has now, with us, with our mental health, we're down, decreased. It's primarily those incidents with our car 80 in our Fox cars, that probably, and I see we had some apprehensions as well, so.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor McNulty, all of our mental health calls are handled by our Fox 80 car, which is with our regular member and the nurse. And, there are times when our frontline officers are engaged with those mental health related calls, but they will engage Fox 80 to take over and carry on the investigation, because it's their specialized skills that they rely on to provide not only to carry on the investigation, but also to provide support to those mental health clients.
Well, that's great. Keep up the good work there. And I also know our drug file it says you're up from last month, but obviously it's down. And I think this one we got to keep a pulse on. Councillor Liu has a motion to come a bit later, which actually has it on it, and I'm going to support it 100%. I'll leave her to do that, but I think it's going to help all of us. And then I'm going to go with my hobby horse, if I may, and that's pedestrian safety. And pedestrian safety are crosswalks. And I need And I had asked my two colleagues here, who have been involved in the policing for almost 100 years between the two of them, but I don't want to, is that long? I don't want to be facetious, but I want to be serious about it. And I'm going to suggest through the communique that the RCMP put out, okay, the little 4-page brochure, I think it's a convenient about utilization at crosswalks. And I'll just take a minute out here. What that yellow flashing light means, and I've always said it should be red, but I had explained to my learned colleagues why it's not red and it's amber. But maybe, and it was mentioned, I think Councillor Hobbs said, maybe we should look at the light that's in it, and it should be an LED light or something else that makes it more distinct, because at certain times of the day, you couldn't see it if you pressed it, and you'd just drive through. The other thing is, too, is the interpretation at lights when the little, and I don't take this wrong, the little man comes up and you walk across, and then the hand comes up and they still walk across. And people are doing right-hand turns, left-hand turns, and people are in the middle of the intersection, even just out here. Could we put somebody in the RCMP or even through Mark or whatever, could we put something in that newsletter, what it really means? Does this hand mean when you're in the intersection, you can continue on, but you shouldn't come in? I don't think the public really know it. Again, I think this is communication and public relations, and this is across society. It's not just any one group or anything like that. They got the hoodies on, the earphones, and they got the thing, and they're doing this as they're going across, and they're no oblivious to everything. Pedestrians, in my opinion, have to take some responsibility for themselves, because the alternative is not very good, okay? And I'm sort of putting it out, and I think all we can do is try. You know, we've had some great PR campaigns, and we've got great results, and I still think it's an issue. It's just my own personal opinion, and I take it under advisement, and staff will record it in the minutes, and maybe I'm wrong, and the other thing is, and somebody mentioned, we are an aging population. You know, Mrs. Smith doesn't cross at the senior center as fast, Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smith, as fast as they used to cross that when that light is working as well. It's in the trees. It's not the best crosswalk, and it's the only one we've got. But again, I'm just thankful we haven't had any incidences on that. So I'm trying to be proactive and safe. So anyhow, same as I said to Fire Rescue, keep up the good work, let our men and women know. We appreciate the job they're doing.
Thank you. And if I may just add to that through the chair to Councillor McNulty, pedestrian safety obviously is one of our road safety initiatives, and with the RCMP, with the volunteers, working with RFR, with our bylaws and other partners, we are continuously promoting public safety, road safety, pedestrian safety, whether it's working at the Brig House station with our transit partners, hanging out reflectors, or especially during winter months when the days are short and it's dark. But I think also in communities like Richmond, when you have a diverse community, people are coming from different countries, sometimes the rules of the roads may not be the same from where they come from, and that certainly creates a higher level of risk. But I can say that when our officers from community engagement team, when we are engaged with the new immigrants, when we go to the immigration centers, that is part of their training, that at least we communicate that to our newcomers, that to be aware, because that is a highly dangerous an area where if people don't know how to navigate or obey the rules of the road, traffic signs, that leads to, injuries and death. So we'll continue our efforts on that, and anything that we can do to enhance pedestrian safety in our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Galanders.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Most of the offenses are within the average range, except for shoplifting and serious assaults. Just given what's going on everywhere with the serious assaults, it just seems to get worse and worse. Just hearing about the stabbing of a boy, 17-year-old, died yesterday on the bus. And it just seems to be getting so much worse. And, you know, Richmond, we just really pride ourselves on being a safe city, and I know there's only so much you can do. A lot of it is the justice system and everything else. I see that like almost 70% of the incidences were, I guess, random because they weren't the domestic ones. 32% were domestic, and that means almost 70% were random. Is there, and it says there's no patterns, but is there like a sort of a place where these things happen the most often? Is it on transit or at the SkyTrain stations or anywhere where you could possibly increase patrolling? I'm sure you already are, but.
Thank you for the question, through the chair to Councillor Galanders. First, you know, with shoplifting, obviously, times are tough for many citizens, and we see those numbers, those offenses fluctuate, but we always, on a quarterly basis or when the need be, we have joint task force operations with, you know, members of our transit, because we know that's one of the, you know, main modes of transportation for a lot of these individuals who are engaged in shoplifting to use transit. So we work with transit and our LP, the loss prevention officers in targeting shoplifters. So I know economically it's tough, but you know, through our CompStat model, through our crime reduction initiatives, we are continuously evaluating that and how, and tailor our response to those. And with the serious assaults, you know, 30+% were domestic related, but they are not necessarily, you know, husband, wife, or partner related. Sometimes it could be father, son, or brothers, etc. But again, these offenses, these numbers, they are tracked. I am part of the meetings on a monthly basis where we look at these. If it's a repeat violent offender, obviously that becomes our priority because they pose significant risk to the public, and then we'll tailor our response to that individual. But a lot of these are, you know, just random, where we have no control and police is in a reactive nature. But those where we know, where we can act, we definitely formulate plans and we target those individuals to ensure public safety.
Just one follow-up question. Do you know what percentage approximately are happening at schools?
To the chair, to Councillor Galanders, I don't have the numbers, but I would say it is very minimal. I rarely hear about incidents or assaults happening at our school levels. So I will say it's minimal to none that I am aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs?
Thank you, and through the chair, thanks for the report. With break and enters, residential and commercial, there's a marked decrease. Can you comment on anything that might have contributed to that, like significant arrests, maybe a prolific offender? How come?
Thank you for that question, to the chair, to Councillor Hobbs. And as I just mentioned a few seconds ago, there are certain prolific offenders in our city. And when we are aware of them, we are proactively targeting them. And that's where you're seeing the decrease in numbers in break and enters. And, or sometimes if it's auto theft, sometimes it just takes one person to generate most of these calls. And if I may refer to Councillor McNulty's concerns for the Mond Street, there were concerns raised by the citizens about crime happening on Mond Street. You know, that was attributed to one individual. And obviously that person had some accomplices, and that person is in custody. So the crime's gone down. And so, yes, just to answer your question, it is, like I said, usually one person, or maybe one or two, who are usually the root cause of some of these problems. And once they're apprehended and they are in custody, those crime rates go down. And that's the case at point here.
Yeah, sometime it might be interesting to hear a little bit about a subject who is a prolific offender and just how prolific they've been, and take them off the street for a while. That definitely helps. With the catalytic converter thefts, I actually had a couple neighbors talk to me because they were victimized. And back in the day, there was a lot of work done with recycling yards and scrap yards and different bylaws in different jurisdictions. And is that still something you're working on now? Because they're obviously taking these somewhere, right?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, all of those areas have been explored, even at the provincial level legislation. You know, we do have some scrap metal dealers here, but all of these stolen items don't necessarily always go to these scrap metal dealers. Sometimes they may be sold to mobile dealers, and then they are, you know, you don't even know who, you know, where they are, and it's difficult to track them. But we are on top of that. I know there's, I believe there's a bylaw provision about reporting, and so my teams are engaged with that, and we are monitoring as to what's happening. And then if we need to obtain any further information from scrap dealers, and we're working on that as well.
Sure. And just one last comment or question, shoplifting. And you just commented on it a little bit, and I know there's hard economic times for people, but I don't like to associate that too much to people committing crime. I mean, there's always exceptional circumstances in anything, but I think there's 102 incidents reported here. And I think it's a vastly underreported crime as well, because when you talk to business people, often they're frustrated with the justice system or some aspect of it, and so they don't report it. So I'm happy to see that you're tracking it, and I know that you have made some arrests, again, with prolific offenders. I just want to compliment you for that and keeping that up, because it's not something that I think we should write off to any kind of economic situation. Small business people are struggling to make it as well. So the question is, and you kind of touched on it earlier, and it's on page 38, I think, or 39, when you're talking about a business link. And I'm wondering, with different business associations or the chamber or in the downtown core of Richmond, are we talking to them about the shoplifting situation and related problems at businesses that don't sell, but maybe a hotel or something? And also, and you touch on it in your report later on, are we looking at beat teams for the downtown core or certain geographic areas to try and get a handle on some of the, not just criminal activity, but some of the disruptive activity that some people can find intimidating and threatening?
Thank you for that question, through the chair to Councillor Hobbs. So with respect to, you know, shoplifting and business outreach, our teams are continuously involved and engaged in reaching out to our businesses to see how they are impacted and what we can do and what they can do to protect themselves. As far as targeting specific areas, that is a constant process for us through our monthly ComStat reporting. We know what the hotspots are, whether it's modular housing. I know there's, you know, some of the areas where, you know, some of the crimes have gone up in those areas. So we have proactive patrols in those areas. So similar to that, if there are areas that surface, that pop up, as we call them as hotspots, we will redeploy our teams or change their priorities to address emerging crime trends or any public safety concerns in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a recommendation on the
There's a
table.
recommendation?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Number 6, 2022-23 Richmond RCMP Detachment Annual Performance Plan to third quarter update.
I don't have any update on that report, but if there's questions, comments, I'll be happy to take them.
Great report.
Councillor Heed?
Yes, a few questions there, Chief. And you kind of touch on it in your last discussion with Councillor Hobbs, is you probably heard they announced the chronic offender hubs. Of course, Richmond, we don't hit that level where we actually need it. But in response to that, I'm sure we'll see some halo effect on how, hopefully, on how we deal with chronic offenders, not from your people, but from our prosecution services here in Richmond, BC. So hopefully they can learn on that so we can actually deal with some of these problematic offenders, whether it's due to their mental health or emotional illness or their drug addiction point of view. We've tried this before. They've just renamed it, given it a new name. You know, look at the expensive community court we have in Vancouver and all that. So be interesting to see if these chronic offender hubs, which Vancouver, I think, is the closest place we have, will make a difference here in Richmond. Either way, either, you know, they're given area restrictions and they start to commit their crimes here in Richmond, or in fact that they're actually incapacitated and dealt with from a different perspective for a period of time. So be interesting to see what happens there.
Thank you for that. And if I just may add through the chair to Councillor Heath, you know, especially when we are dealing with repeat violent offenders, obviously there's changes in policy from at the provincial level. And, you know, now we have a designated Crown Counsels who are assigned to us, so, which is a good news. And at least we are, you know, dealing with a one specific individual, and they will have a better oversight and control when we are dealing with repeat violent offenders. So, again, those who are identified and pose significant risk to our community, and you know, they get prioritized, and our teams will be deployed and working on them.
Good, thank you. If we just move on to your report here on the organized crime aspect of it, and there's been a couple of, or several news stories in the last little while with respect to labs that you've interdicted here in Richmond, which is very, very good news, given the fact that it appears that they're trying to have the production level of fentanyl-based products here in Richmond. So that's good news. And, you know, I take into your report the increase in deaths related to illicit drug toxicity. So where I wanted to go here is we had 28 deaths last year in Richmond. According to the Chief Wishlove's statistics, February went up. Are we going to, in your plan, three-year plan, kind of address that? Because, you know, I don't see it going away. It was here before the pandemic. It's here after the pandemic. Our numbers are going up. Here, we still don't have the resources we need. And I'm one to tell you that based on my experience and my knowledge and my research, I'm a supporter of a safe consumption site for these products, so we don't have these deaths that are occurring. So I just wanted to know, is there any way, Chief, from your point of view, we could kind of have this as somewhat of a priority going forward to deal with these people that are involved in it from an organized crime aspect?
Thank you for that, to the chair too. Councillor Heath, two things I'll mention with respect to that. Obviously, those who are at high level, they're high targets for us. And our organized crime team, our drug unit team, will continue to target them. And, you know, those individuals, you know, who need support and who are, you know, dependent on illicit drugs, especially with decrim now, our teams, our members, the police, you know, we do the best we can in providing them with the information and hopefully hoping that they will read and perhaps seek out the help, the resources or the support services that that are there for them. But as far as those high-level targets are concerned, that will remain our high priority.
And just a follow-up question before I go to the next one. In your position here in E Division and at the higher level in E Division, do they develop priorities on organized crime, or do you have the ability beyond your drug unit to develop priorities and get the resources, whether from CFSEU or some other agency, to assist you?
Through the chair to Councillor Heath, thank you for that question. The priorities are developed at the local level here. We see what is impacting our city and what concerns we have, whether we are working with our partners from BPD if there's a joint operation, the recent success that they had here with the lab, or if it's CFSU, or whether it's Delta or Surrey, if we have to pool our resources together and have a coordinated approach, we will do that. And we often do that with some of our investigations, especially dealing with organized crime, gangs, and drugs.
And that's in our next item, right, the priorities?
I think we're into that, aren't we?
Then move the recommendation.
We're still on number 6. The priorities is the next one, yeah?
Next one, performance plan, number 7.
Okay. Sorry there,
Keeping you in
Madam
line.
Chair.
Keep straight and narrow.
You said you're never surprised.
Move the recommendation.
Didn't say I was surprised. All in favor? Okay.
Now we're on.
Now, the
Now,
community
now,
priorities.
Now.
Councillor Heed.
Here. You know, I don't want to get political on this, Chief, definitely not. You know, I'll take the hit for that on being political. The mental health issue, the homelessness issue, they're poly, in my opinion, my humble opinion, and based on my experiences. Is there any movement to support from your association, or even locally from the BCACMP, Association of Chiefs of Police across the region, to look at supporting some institutionalization of the severely emotional illness that people may have? You don't have to reply to that, Chief. I'll push that.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Heed, I'm not aware of any specific programs that are being considered or are in place, but I mean, that is something that certainly, can be discussed at the BC Chiefs level and see if there's anything can be done with respect to that.
And Chair, I'll just make a comment to the committee, not necessarily related to the chief. I think we need to look at it as a committee in the future of what we're going to deal with on the institutionalization, whether we're going to support it or not, of the severely addicted mentally ill people. And I'll just make that comment and leave it. Now, thank you very much, Chief. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs?
Thank you, and through the chair. Yeah, that's a good point that was just made, and I think the Premier is commenting on that too, so it would be interesting to talk about that. Just with the report itself, when I look at the priorities on page 67, 1 through 4, at first blush, crimes against people seems to be not in there as much as I'd like, even though obviously people are involved in all of these things. What I'm talking about is violent crime, sex assaults, robberies, assaults. So how does that fit into the priorities? Because personally, I feel that should be in there explicitly.
So the plan that you have before you, that's the RCMP's annual performance plan. And the number of priorities that are selected there that are to have a consistency across the division level about a number of priorities that impact every community. As far as other crime is concerned, violent crimes, sex assaults, hate crimes, they are my priorities every day. And they are priorities of your Richmond RCMP. And so even though they are not incorporated in this document, but they form part of our monthly reporting and provides council with oversight and the ability to, ask questions or whatever. So there are just a limited number of priorities that form part of the annual performance plan. But the other ones, as you mentioned, crimes against people, they are equally, high-profile priorities, and we treat them as such, but they are just reported differently.
Sure, and I appreciate the global picture of U-Division. So on page 70 with figure 3, I just wondered, with regard to ICBC, has been a really vibrant, productive relationship. Is that still there for this type of information we're talking about in Table 3?
Sorry, I have a different report, so I don't have,
It's vehicle collision involving
Page 7
pedestrians.
of
Okay.
your report.
Page 7 of your report, yes, sorry.
okay. We have a very strong relationship with ICBC. And, whether it's, road safety initiatives and as recently as distracted driving, I am very pleased with that. I am personally involved in those quarterly meetings with ICBC senior management in coming up with different safety initiatives and what, more we can do to enhance pedestrian safety, motor vehicle safety, prevent collisions. We had a joint commercial vehicle safety enforcement done with our partners with VPD on Knight Street. I know there was a member of our citizen had expressed concerns about Knight C bridge enforcement. So, we have a very strong, very productive relationship, not only with ICBC, but with bylaws and the Passenger Transportation Board and many other partners.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. And just one last question, I guess, is on figure 4, so page 8 of your report, 71 for us, with the decrease in mental health related files, that seems almost counterintuitive to me. So I'm just wondering, is there a statistical reason why there's a decrease? Is it a different categorization? Is it sending calls from Fox 80 off to, another agency, or is it real?
Thank you for that, through the chair to Councillor Hobbs. Some of the clients, who are, experiencing mental health issues, our officers and nurses are sometimes successful in when they're dealing with them and when they're offering them that assistance. And some people are willing to take that assistance, and and also with our assertive community team who are there, always available to provide support to them. But it goes beyond that. We have our investigators they're very passionate when they deal with mental health clients, and there's a bond formed there too. And through that bond, through that personal relationship, that personal interaction, and checking on those individuals if somebody's taking their medication or they're going to go see their doctor, it's just those regular, just little contacts, phone calls, sometimes prevents the reoccurrence of calls where we have to go check on them. So it's an overall effort, with the police and working together with our partners, with our nurses, Vancouver Coastal Health and others. And it's always nice to see when we can bring those numbers down.
That's good. And just a last comment on that. I agree with what you just said. And I think the public, maybe can realize that police and partners and stakeholders go to thousands and hundreds of thousands of these calls over a period of time. And the vast, vast, vast majority are in some way or another successfully resolved. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gillanders.
Thank you, Chair. Along the same lines as Councillor Heed was talking about reducing the harm relating to the overdose deaths and drug poisoning deaths. I see that you've got that in here under the organized crime. It really is a huge, massive issue in our community and everywhere. And, this probably isn't the right place to bring this up, but I just wanted to know what the RCMP's thoughts would be on expanding the availability of drug testing kits, because, a lot of these people who are dying wouldn't necessarily go to an overdose prevention site. They're just, maybe they're kids, and now that, and this kind of fits with the overdose crime, I believe that, drug dealers are targeting kids through Snapchat, so they can just go on Snapchat and order what they might think is ecstasy pills, for example, and it's nowhere near an overdose prevention site. But if there was drug testing kits available just at the drugstore, the way COVID testing kits are, like, why wouldn't there just be a basket of drug testing kits? Kids can just go and grab a drug testing kit and check their pill, and if it comes up fentanyl. And I just wanted to see, would there be any, would the RCMP embrace that type of thing, or would it be an issue with some sort of enforcement issue because the kids shouldn't have the drugs, so they shouldn't get the testing kits?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, I'll say two things before I address that about the testing kits. Education is really a key tool for us in deterring, people from using drugs. And we start here at a very early level with our students, with our DARE program, the Drug Abuse Resistance Education. Just to inform our children the harmful effects of drugs, and that program is well received, and I'm quite pleased with the progress that we have made here in our schools. With respect to testing testing kits, I believe that's more a health-related, provincial government-related question. Mm-hmm. But in my view, if there's anything out there that's going to prevent and save lives, it makes sense. But from our RCMP perspective, I'm not privy to anything that's being discussed at a higher level in having those testing kits available in stores, whatnot. But drugs out there have different composition, different mixtures, and sometimes you may have fentanyl can be cut with multiple agents, and how do you distinguish or, check the lethality or the clarity of that drug. So I'm not aware of, any programs or anyone pursuing that. But as I said, I think anything that can be done to prevent lives, save lives, it's certainly worth considering.
Yeah, just a follow-up. I think that from what I know, that it's small organizations like the Compassion Club or one particular place on the downtown east side that has drug testing kits. So I think it would be up to a municipality to perhaps write a letter to the provincial government asking for an expansion of these services and for them to be in every drugstore. But yeah, the quality of the testing, and it seems like there's just more and more chemical compounds out there. It's be hard to stay on top of it, unfortunately. But anything that we could use would be great. So maybe that could go to GP at some point where we could lobby the provincial government for expansion of that. I just wanted to make sure you'd be on board, and thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Al?
Yes. Well, first of all, I have to say that I agree with the chief for your comments about the mental health related files. Yes, I think you're right. That is the bond between the service provider, the nurses, RCMP, and the clients, right? It's very important. A small thing like that can really help to give them the support they need and to move forward. I think that's the contributing factor to the decrease of the number of cases. Now, a question about the plan, the annual plan. Now, you mentioned that, actually in each detachment, you can have your priority because, there's different circumstances in different cities. So you on page CS 67, you name those 4 areas, which is common, right? You mentioned this basically across the nation, or at least across the points. But we know that in Richmond, the racism or hate crime is still a problem, and so why is it not there? I remember that last year, same thing, was not being mentioned at your original report, and I brought it up in the council meeting, and then it's being included. And I'm glad that actually the RCMP has done something. For example, on CS page 34, you talk about the different programs that you have been put in place. to address the hate crime issue. And also, you also reported that the numbers, is going down. I think probably because of the effort and the education and all other things. So why is it not that you put it here? Put it in the plan again this year, because I think the problem is still there, right? It might have been improved, but it's not over yet.
Through the chair to Councillor Howe, thank you for your comment with respect to the mental health calls and about the priority list. As I mentioned earlier, whether it's serious assault, sex crimes, or hate crimes, they all are priorities. And through our Richmond RCMP Diversity and Inclusion Unit, through our community engagement team for frontline response, through education and enforcement measures, we remain on top of hate incident and hate crime related issues, similar to all the other crimes. The council has a great deal of oversight and the ability to ask any updates or any questions, and as I mentioned earlier, they do form part of our monthly reporting to the City Council. So there is a tracking mechanism. It's still a priority, and it's just not included in this report, but it is, to me, as I have mentioned earlier, it's a top priority, and it will remain a top priority for us.
Well, I still hope that, this can be included in the annual plan. I'm not a member of this committee, I cannot make a motion, but, I will bring it up again in the next council meeting, because I hope that can be included. The job has not been finished, and given the fact that we have still a number of high-profile cases recently, and also that the Human Rights Commissioner has just provided a report in early March talking about some of the issues that are still existing, and she has made some recommendations. So I think the problem is still there, and to have this included in the annual plan would give a signal to the larger community, saying that we take it very seriously, and we are still doing more things. Now, and another question is about the community protocol. So you know that the community protocol against hate crime and racism was being adopted by the council. So what's RCMP's response to that? So are you going to adopt the protocol as well, or what?
Thank you for that, through the chair to Councillor Au. The Richmond RCMP and the city have taken a very strong stance that hate has no place in Richmond. And, that has been communicated via news releases, my statements, and through action of the RCMP in prosecuting those individuals, involved in hate crime-related incidents, and then also having public awareness when it comes to hate-related incidents. Going back to my earlier comment, they remain a priority for us. And as I mentioned that, it is, the council still has top-level oversight and the ability to, hold me accountable anytime to address any questions or concerns. It's an issue we can't eradicate. I think it's going to be there, but we will stay on top of that through our different teams, community engagement team, through our diversity unit, through our frontline response, and with our aggressive posture. We'll continue to send a strong message to the community and those who are engaged in that where we can, and we will charge and prosecute those individuals for hate crime related incidents.
Move the recommendation.
Second, I did want to make a comment, actually. Thank you for your report. Councillor Heed had brought up safe consumption sites. Councillor Galander's brought up testing. I know that it doesn't necessarily ensure that something's safe because new things are coming up, but it can ensure that something is definitely unsafe. I don't know how often kids would necessarily, or what age group kids would go in, because I can definitely recall, being too shy to get a feminine hygiene product when I was a teenager out of a public washroom where just women were watching me, or not even watching me, as the case may be. But so I wonder if that would even work. I do know, however, or I have heard that the Ann Vogel Clinic has prescription opioids for users, and that is available for people who are users to go and get prescription opioids so that they're getting a safe supply. They have access to a safe supply if that's what they're requiring for their use. So while we don't have a safe consumption site, there is availability for people here in Richmond to get safe supply in Richmond, which doesn't help some of the people we've lost recently, but getting that word out is maybe as important as having it. Because if people don't know about it, it's the same as not having it. Okay, so move the recommendation. Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
No, you're gonna do yours.
Well, I'll wait for the briefing and then we'll,
Oh, sorry, yeah.
yeah. Anything to brief us on?
Sorry, no, that's it. I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, well, I will bring up what we have something for you, and for actually a bunch of our staff, as a matter of fact. It came to our attention and following up on some of your comments about vulnerable populations, the work you're doing with vulnerable populations, and the interface with some of the modular housing. We got some complaints from local hoteliers and how their security costs have gone up 300% in the last couple of years, dealing with, things happening in stairwells, whatever else. I think I'd like to make a referral to staff to investigate and report back on the range of housing continuum that would better facilitate individuals who entered low barrier housing to graduate to other types of housing and leaving the neighborhood. We'd like to have the providers of the modular housing, or the supportive housing, to review their policies on drug use in the rooms, because I think that relates to that. We'd like to see the efficacy of the operator at the Elderbridge Way modular housing, the length of time left on that lease, and statistics on the recovery and housing journey of past residents. We'd like to know, number 3, statistics on calls for services from various departments, including severity of crime in the area, in comparison over time with other similar communities with similar modular housing installed. Number 4, we'd like to know whether other healthcare service enforcement can be provided to discourage these issues from escalating. Number 5, we invite the Vancouver Coastal Health Medical Officer to present an update on overdose deaths and how the province is implementing the healthcare first approach after decriminalization of illicit drugs. And I think we'd also like to know how many of those are happening in residential homes versus more either in modular housing or out on the street, because I think in Richmond, I think we still have a number of people that it's closed and it's at home where this is happening. So I don't know if you have any comments on any of that.
Second, that's a referral.
That's a referral. Anyone want to add anything?
No, it's good, it's all encompassing.
Okay, and I think it needs to come back to GP so that everyone can find out about it. Thank you. Okay, you want to add? Of course you do.
Yes. I think it's important to remember there are supervised consumption rooms in the low barrier modular homes. So we have that there and, supervised with staff. So just want to make sure that we're aware that is one area where we already have them. And I think rather than, we should try and garnish something that is working out of staff's report too. So I'm hoping that the report is broad enough to look at some of the positive aspects, because we have talked so much about ensuring we have the necessary housing for our vulnerable population in Richmond. I think I'm encouraging staff to come back with some of the more prominent, positive aspects of it, along with some of the negatives as to alluding to the complaint that's coming. I just don't want to see the NIMBYism played out when this information comes back to us.
Laurel and referral.
Okay. Anyone? Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Move adjournment.
We are adjourned. Oh, sorry, did we have any managers' reports?
Oh,
Hang
sorry,
on,
sorry.
hold the phone.
Move half of adjournment.
Rescind.
I rescind my motion.
Move to rescind.
I didn't get a seconder, so it's not good.
You don't,
So
a joke.
hopefully, I'm not having a seniors moment. I have a fear that I might have given you an update on this already, but if I did, I apologize. We actually received a bill on the retro payment for the RCMP from the previous collective agreement. The good news is the city of Richmond has put aside sufficient funds to pay for it. They also are giving us 2 years interest-free timing to pay for that amount, which we will take full advantage of so that we can, get some interest on the money that we have set aside. So that's what we have.
Great, good news. Move adjournment.
thank you.